We tend to think of history as this grand, epic story, right? Something written by brilliant visionaries with these perfect, flawless plans. We see it as a straight line of genius strategies leading to outcomes that were just inevitable. But what if I told you that the biggest turning points in our past weren't driven by genius at all? What if they were driven by colossal, world-changing mistakes?
Just let that sink in for a second. Not destiny, not some grand design, just a person in a single moment getting it completely and utterly wrong. In this explainer, we're going to peel back the myths and look at the real drivers of history, the overlooked decisions, the fatal miscalculations, and the simple human errors that literally reshaped our entire world.
So the main idea we're exploring here is that for every intentional architect of history we celebrate, there's another force that's just as powerful: the unintended architects. These are the people whose mistakes, not their master plans, are the things that ended up changing everything.
And this, right here, this really gets to the heart of it. You've got the conventional view we're all taught in school. History is all about grand strategies and inevitable outcomes, all guided by genius and destiny. But the hidden reality? Oh, it's so much messier. It's a story of huge blunders, totally unintended consequences, and the one thing that never changes: simple human fallibility.
So how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, let's open up the case files. We're going to dive into 3 very specific moments where a seemingly tiny error spiraled into a catastrophe that changed the world forever.
Okay, our first case file starts way back in 1218 in Central Asia. You've got Genghis Khan, the leader of this rising Mongol power. And believe it or not, he wasn't looking to conquer the West. He was looking to do business. He sent a massive trade caravan to the powerful Khwarezmian Empire. The goal was simple: commerce, not conflict.
But here's where it all goes wrong. A local Khwarezmian governor, thinking they were spies, had the entire delegation executed. So Genghis Khan sends diplomats to demand justice. And what does the Shah do? He doubles down. He has them killed too. Now, this wasn't some act of pure madness. From the Shah's perspective, this was a perfectly reasonable show of strength. He was the head of a huge empire, and these were just some upstart nomads. He completely, fatally misjudged the moment.
And the result of those 2 little diplomatic insults? One of the most brutal and destructive invasions in all of human history, leading to an estimated 10 to 15 million deaths. The Mongols didn't just win a war, they literally erased the Khwarezmian Empire from the map, all because one leader's overconfidence led to a mistake that could never be taken back. All right, let's jump forward about 700 years. It's 1914 in Sarajevo. Tensions are boiling over across Europe. Archduke Franz Ferdinand is visiting the city. Suddenly, a bomb is thrown at his motorcade, but it misses. The Archduke is fine. For one brief, fleeting moment, it looks like disaster has been completely averted. But what happens next is just this cascade of tiny, almost comical errors. The procession decides to keep going, but the Archduke's driver gets confused about the new route and makes a wrong turn. He realizes his mistake, tries to back up, and the car stalls. And where does it stall? Directly in front of Gavrilo Princip, one of the assassins who was standing there thinking his chance was completely gone. Think about that. A wrong turn, a stalled engine. Those 2 tiny, mundane mistakes put the Archduke directly in the crosshairs. And the shots that rang out triggered a series of rigid military alliances that were like dominoes. Once the first one fell, there was no stopping the rest. A simple navigational error became the spark that ignited a global war and killed 16 million people.
For our final case, we're going to 1986, inside the control room of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. A team of engineers is running a safety test, and the key word here is routine. This wasn't some dangerous rogue experiment. This was a procedure designed to make the plant safer. But this wasn't just a simple accident. It was a total system failure. As the reactor became more and more unstable, the operator started deliberately ignoring and violating safety protocols, all because they were determined to complete the test. Alarms were blaring, warnings were flashing, and they just pushed forward. Why? Because the whole Soviet system was built on a culture that punished anyone who raised a problem and rewarded just ticking the boxes. In their minds, stopping the test was the real failure.
And the result of that deeply ingrained culture of obedience? A catastrophic explosion that blasted a cloud of radioactive fallout across an entire continent. It left huge areas completely uninhabitable and created a legacy of death and disease that we are still dealing with today. Okay, so we've got a diplomatic insult, a wrong turn, and a culture of silence. On the surface, these things seem totally unrelated. But if you start to dissect them, if you look closer, you find they all share a common anatomy, one that's rooted in these really deep, very human patterns of behavior.
And you see these same patterns over and over again. You've got the pure hubris and overconfidence of the Khwarezmian Shah, who just couldn't imagine being challenged. You have the rigid, unstoppable systems of the 1914 military alliances, where one tiny spark set off an automatic, irreversible countdown to war. And then you've got the suppression of dissent, which was at the absolute core of Chernobyl, where nobody felt they could say stop. These aren't just isolated screw-ups. They are recurring bugs in the human operating system.
So, looking at all this, you have to ask the obvious question, right? After all these horrifying catastrophes, after all this history, surely we've learned our lesson. I mean, we have more data, we have better technology, we should be immune to these kinds of massive errors by now.
Well, this is where it gets a little bit chilling, because the biggest takeaway from all of this might just be the one lesson that history shows, time and again, we have failed to learn.
There is one common thread, one single, unifying trait that connects nearly every one of these world-altering blunders, from the ancient world right up to today.
And it's this. At the time, the decision felt reasonable. To the Khwarezmian Shah, defying some distant tribe just seemed like a smart projection of strength. To the engineers at Chernobyl, pushing through to finish the test was just doing their job. To that driver in Sarajevo, making a wrong turn was just a minor inconvenience. These weren't acts of cartoonish evil. They were the product of flawed logic that seemed perfectly sound in the moment.
And that leads us to the most unsettling and maybe the most important conclusion of all. The people who make the next great blunder won't think they're making a mistake. They'll be convinced they're being rational or decisive or prudent. The next world-changing error isn't going to come with a giant flashing warning sign. It's going to feel reasonable. And that is exactly why understanding the anatomy of these past mistakes isn't just about learning history. It's an essential tool for our own survival.